This is the world-ending threat and psychic love child of Professor X and Magneto, Onslaught. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions about him recently. Watch the video for a second, you'll probably figure out why. All of this begins back in X-Men number 25, where Magneto, for completely different reasons than what we've seen in X-Men 97, EMPs the entire Earth, killing hundreds, if not thousands of people. This pushes Professor X way past his breaking point. He decides that he's going to do what he should have done a long time ago, and we see him assemble what is essentially an X-Men hit squad to go to space and fight Magneto. During the fight, Magneto is distracted. We see Wolverine is able to get the drop on him and actually stab him, mortally wounding him. In retaliation, Magneto then rips all the adamantium out of Wolverine's body. Funny enough, I've talked about this in several videos before, but this is where the retcon that Wolverine actually has bone claws first comes into play. By this point, you're probably figuring out why people are asking about this. In retaliation for that, Charles then essentially lobotomizes Magneto. He, drops him into a catatonic state. While we had no idea about it at this time, years later we find out that this is actually the birth of Onslaught. And years down the road, we see this creation moment where we see the fight between Charles and Magneto played out on the astral plane. This final, very psychic, intimate moment as Magneto's brain and astral self is dying, we see all of his very intense, dark, and negative emotions start to bond with Xavier's astral form. Again, Onslaught laid dormant for years, but Professor X's frustration with how society was treating mutants was growing stronger and stronger. He had also had a lot of personal failures here recently trying to rehabilitate Sabretooth. A young mutant was killed right outside of the mansion. This is really the catalyst for Onslaught first possessing Charles Xavier. We see Professor X having no memory of doing certain things like researching Franklin Richards. At first, Onslaught was just a being that existed on the astral plane. But thanks to a recent psychic interaction with Nate Gray, we see that Charles Xavier's astral form was actually pulled from the astral plane to reality itself. Little did they know at the time, but this is what actually allowed Onslaught to be able to physically manifest himself here in this world. From the very get-go, Onslaught shows insane levels of power. Not only is he able to stop the Juggernaut, but knocks him from Canada to New Jersey. He's able to rip the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak straight out of Juggernaut's chest. During one of the initial battles with Onslaught, Thor was actually able to successfully remove Charles Xavier, thinking that Onslaught would have no connection to this Earth anymore. But as it would turn out, Charles was just holding Onslaught back, and his removal actually made Onslaught even stronger. If that wasn't enough, Onslaught becomes even stronger when he steals and absorbs Franklin Richards, the Reality Warper, and one of the most powerful telepaths ever, Nate Gray. Now, at first, Onslaught's initial plan is, what Magneto's was, mutant supremacy. After reading Nate Gray's thoughts, who comes from the Age of Apocalypse timeline, and seeing, what a world ran by mutants looks like, Onslaught just decides that everyone should die. It took the entirety of the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and the X-Men to beat Onslaught originally. After his outer shell, his armor was destroyed by the Hulk, Onslaught became a being of pure psychic energy. Thor is able to fly through and disrupt Onslaught's psychic form, but obviously he's not near enough to completely stop him. Because mutants seem to power Onslaught up and Thor didn't, the non-mutant members of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers charge into Onslaught, absorbing his energy into themselves. While outside, the X-Men then all attack Onslaught, successfully destroying him, but also killing the Avengers and the Fantastic Four along with him. Or at least we thought so at the time. This actually leads into one of the absolute worst blunders that Marvel Comics has ever had with Heroes Reborn. It turned out that Franklin Richards had actually created a pocket universe where the Avengers and then Fantastic Four had lived in for a year. Again, it didn't last long because it was very poorly received. Yeah, in conclusion, I do believe that they will do some variation of this with the X-Men 97 show.